Students, let us discuss the second act, that is the Indian Partnership Act 1932. One very quick revision of the basics, something that you already know, but many a times it happens that even though we are aware of the concepts, we are not able to apply it because we are overconfident. There's nothing new in it. We already know about partnership. Why do we need to study again? So sometimes we are so overconfident that we miss out on certain finer points. So I want you to revise the unit 1 even though you are aware of the concepts. Now, the Indian Partnership Act was introduced on, do you remember the date? It was introduced on 1st October 1932. What is the date? 1st October 1932. It is applicable to, yes, what will you write? It is applicable to the whole of India. It applies to Jammu and Kashmir also. Earlier, it was a part of, yes, it was a part of chapter 11 of the Indian Contract Act. (1872). So earlier it was a part of chapter 11 of the Indian Contract Act 1872. So this is the introduction of partnership, something which will never be asked in the exam. It's for our knowledge. So this act was introduced on 1st October. It applies to the whole of India. And it was earlier a part of the Indian Contract Act. How will you define partnership? Partnership is defined under section 4 of the Partnership Act. So it is defined as partnership is the relation between persons. So what is the key word in the definition? Persons who have agreed to share the profits of the business carried on by all or any one of them acting for all. Students, we will come to know, we will find out the essential elements from the definition itself. So the partnership is relation between two or more persons who have agreed to share the profits of the business carried on by all or any one of them acting for all. Now tell me, students, how many persons required to form a partnership? We need minimum 2. And what is the maximum limit? Maximum is 50, not 100. 100 was just suggested. Later, the act, this in fact, the maximum limit was never given in the Partnership Act. This maximum limit is given in the Companies Act. Okay, and according to the Companies Act 2013, maximum we can have 50 partners. Okay, so it is given in the Companies Act. It is not 100 that was just suggested. So you can have maximum 50 partners. What if I have more than 50? Then you need to register yourself as a company. You cannot function as a partnership. They have agreed to share. What is this agreement known as? It is known as the partnership deed. Yes, it is known as the partnership deed. I'll write it properly. Partnership deed. Okay, should this deed be in writing? Should it be oral? Or it can be either? Yes, it can be either in writing or it may be oral. Okay, it may be either in writing or it may be oral. But what is preferred? Writing is preferred. What does it contain? What are the contents of partnership deed? Name of the partner, name of the firm, address, details of the partners, profit sharing ratio. You are absolutely right. Interest on capital, interest on drawings, interest on loan, salary, commission, etc. There is sharing of profit. In what ratio? Sharing of profits in the profit sharing ratio. What if it is not specified? Then equal. Okay, if it is not specified, then equal. Okay, do we have a loss sharing ratio? No, the ratio in which we share profits, that is the same ratio in which we will share loss. So even though here they have mentioned sharing of profit, it is understood that the loss will also be shared in this ratio. There is business. We are sharing profits of the business. Business means any trade, occupation, profession. Okay, it includes trade, occupation, profession. There must be business, because if there's no business, how will you earn profits? How will you share that profits? So business is compulsory. If there is business, write down students, there is partnership. What if there is no business? Then there is no partnership. So business is compulsory. Should it be profit making business, or it can be a non-profit business? Of course, it has to be profit making business. It has to be profit making. Only then you will share it, no? Carried on by all or any one of them, acting for all. So the arrow is over here, students. This concept is nothing but mutual agency. What is the meaning of mutual agency? That each partner is principal as well as agent. So he plays a double role. Each partner is principal as well as agent. As a principal, he is bound by the act of other partners, and as an agent, he can bind the others by his act. So that is something very important. Mutual agency. If there is mutual agency, they are partners. If there is no mutual agency, they are not partners. So what will you write? If there is mutual agency, there is partnership. If there is no mutual agency, there is no partnership. Students, please pause the video and write this down. Done? Okay. Very good. Now, then we have the duration of partnership. Partnership may be either partnership at will, or it may be a particular partnership. What is the meaning of partnership at will? My wish, my desire. Duration not fixed. Duration is not fixed. Dissolution, I can dissolve any time that I want. So dissolution, you can also say retirement. Duration is not fixed. I don't know when this partnership business will come to an end. Dissolution or retirement can be done by any partner. Okay, it can be done by any partner. Just by giving notice to the firm. 14 days notice, yes. So you need to give a 14 days notice to the firm of your intention to dissolve the business. Even retirement can be, any partner can retire by giving 14 days notice. What about particular partnership? Now, particular means that it is formed for a, what should we write, students? It is formed for a particular purpose. I'll write the word particular. It is formed for a particular purpose or for a particular period of time. Okay. So let's say that I have formed a partnership with my friend for construction of a bridge, of a flyover, or it is for selling of mobiles or selling of tablets. So it is formed for a particular purpose. It is formed for a particular period of time. Okay. So it is formed for a particular purpose or for a particular period of time. The duration that is fixed. Okay. So the duration will be till the purpose is over or till the time period ends. Yes, or time period. Let's say that I have formed a partnership for 5 years. So in this case, after 5 years, the partnership will come to an end. Okay. So duration is till the purpose is over or till the time period expires. After that, it will come to an end. But what if I'm liking doing, I like doing business with that person. I want to continue even after the expiry of time, even after the purpose is over. Yes, you can continue. Then it will be considered as, you can write down, it will be considered as partnership at will. Okay, it will be considered as partnership at will. How will the dissolution take place? Now, over here, when it is a particular partnership, dissolution will be with the consent of all partners. Okay. Now, what is the difference between partnership at will, particular partnership? In case of partnership at will, duration is not fixed. You can dissolve it anytime. Okay. You can dissolve it anytime. So dissolution can be by any partner. You can also write anytime. It can be dissolved anytime by any partner. Just give 14 days notice. Okay, what about particular partnership? Over here, it is formed for a particular purpose or a period of time. Time is over, partnership comes to an end. Purpose is over, partnership comes to an end. If I want to continue, it's partnership at will. And it can be dissolved with the consent of all the partners. Types, I don't think you need to revise this. This is something which you have been studying since 12th standard. What is the meaning of active partner? Someone who is very active in the business of the firm. Okay, so you can write down, he actively participates in the business of the firm. He's very active. What is the meaning of a sleeping partner? Sleeping means he is not active. He does not actively participate. So he does not actively participate in the business of the firm. What about nominal partner? So nominal means he lends his name only. He lends his name without contributing any capital. Law says you need not even give him his share of profit. He doesn't need it. Partner in profit only. So he is a person who is just like an active partner. He shares profits. He will not share loss. He shares only profits, not losses. Now let us talk about their liability. Is an active partner liable for the acts of the firm? Yes, very much liable. Is a sleeping partner liable for the acts of the firm? Yes, he is a partner. He has to be liable. Nominal partner. Yes, dear, he is a partner, right? Even though he lends his name, he's still liable. What about a partner in profit only? Of course, he's just like any other active partner. He is liable for acts of the firm. Then what is a sub-partner? See, sub-partner means partner of a partner. So who is a sub-partner? He's partner of a partner. Now let's say that X, Y, Z, they are three partners. Z agrees to share his profits with A. Now A is considered as sub-partner. Okay, A is considered as a sub-partner of Z. Now I'm not concerned what Z does with his share of profit. That sub-partner is nowhere connected to the firm. Will he be liable for the acts of the firm? Will firm be liable for his acts? No, because he is not a partner. Then who is a partner by estoppel or partner by holding out? He is not exactly a partner, but he by his own words says that I am a partner, I am a partner. That is known as active representation. So he actively represents himself as partner. He says, I'm a partner, I'm a partner, even though he is not. Or he allows himself to be represented, or he allows himself to be represented as a partner. So you either actively say that I am a partner even though you are not, or you allow someone to represent you as a partner. See, if you are saying that I am a partner, you're not denying it. Yes, you will be liable for that particular transaction. You will be liable just as a partner. You are partner by estoppel. The last and the most important part, in case questions are asked, they will be asked on minor partner only. Minor, can he be admitted as a partner? My answer will be no. Minor cannot become a partner. Can minor be admitted as a partner? No. Why no? Since he is incompetent to contract. Okay, he's incompetent. So I don't think he will be admitted as a partner. If voluntary, no. But yes, under certain circumstances, he can be admitted. So your basic answer will be no, he cannot be admitted because he's not capable of contracting. In fact, any agreement with him is void ab initio, and partnership is the result of an agreement. So no, he cannot be a partner. But under certain circumstances, if certain conditions are satisfied, then yes, he may be admitted as a partner. What are those conditions? The first condition is that his admission must be for benefit of the firm. Okay? His admission must result in some benefit to the firm. The second requirement is that this admission requires consent of all partners. Okay, it requires the consent of all partners. Third, and the most important one, that the firm must be in existence at the time of admission of minor partner. Okay? So can I say that you can admit a minor only in an existing firm? You cannot form a partnership with a minor. Students, if you follow my Telegram channel regularly, then you will remember I had given you a question for practice. Can minor be admitted in a new firm? Your answer is no. He can be admitted only in an existing firm. You cannot form a partnership with minor. Next, we have the rights, the liabilities of minor before maturity. Now, let's say that we have admitted a minor partner for the benefits of the firm. So, what are his rights and what are his liabilities? Okay. Now let us talk about his rights. He has a share in profit, yes. He can share profits. This is one of the rights. He can share profits. In what ratio? Agreed ratio. Okay, he can share profits in agreed ratio. He can also go through the books of accounts. He can also go through the books of accounts. He has access to the books. Okay, you can use the word access. Access means he can go through the books. Next is, he can also file a suit. If he is denied his share of profit. Okay, so he can even file a case if he is denied, if he's not given his share of profit. But he can file a case only when he decides to leave the firm. Only when he decides to leave the firm. So let's say that he is a minor. He is not given his share of profit. He has the right to sue, but he can exercise this right only when he decides to leave the firm. So he has a right to share in profits. He has the right to books of accounts. He has a right to file a case if he's not given his share of profit. What about his liability? What about his liability? He has limited liability. It means it is only restricted to his share in the profitability. Yes, he is not personally liable. He is not personally liable. So if you want, you can write that. He has limited liability. Okay, I'll write it properly for you. So you can say that he has limited liability. He is not personally liable. Now minor has become major. Okay, so minor becomes major. Then he has two options. He can either elect to be a full-fledged partner. Okay, he can say that I want to be a full-fledged partner. Or he may say that no, I don't want to continue as a partner. Now I am a major, I can take my own decisions. So what if he has become a major and he says that I want to become a partner? He elects to become a partner. Nothing will change. Rights and liabilities will remain the same as it was before he attained majority. So it will remain same. But now his liability will be, okay, let me write this over here. It's not a common point. It will remain the same. Everything will continue like it was. But yes, now he will be personally liable. See, earlier also he was liable, but it was limited. Now that he has become a major and he wants to continue as a partner, he elects to become a partner, then in this case, he will now start being personally liable. His share in property will remain the same as it was before majority. He elects not to become a partner. See, all this must be done within 6 months of attaining majority, or within 6 months of him attaining knowledge that he was admitted as a minor partner for the benefits of the firm, whichever is later. Now let's say that he turned major. After 7-8 months, he realized, oh, I was admitted for the benefits of the partnership. Then he will be given an option that, okay, now you came to know about it, you can decide whether you want to continue or whether you want to leave. If he elects not to be a partner, I don't want to continue as a partner. All right, give a public notice. That is most important. If you don't give public notice, we will assume that you want to continue as a partner. So you have to give a public notice that you don't want to continue. In that case, your rights and liabilities will be same as that of a minor. Please note, students, you have to write till the date of public notice. Okay, it will remain the same as that of a minor till the date of public notice. What about his liability? That will also remain same as it was during minority. It will remain the same as that of a minor till the date of public notice. What about his share in profit and property? If he is denied, okay, if he is not getting his share, let me write the word denied. If now he is denied, he can sue because he has decided not to become a partner. He has decided to leave the firm. Okay, if he is denied, then he can sue, as he is leaving the firm. Okay, as he is leaving the firm. Is it clear, students? So if he decides not to become a partner, give a public notice. Everything will remain the same. Now he can even file a case because he is leaving the firm. Please pause the video, students, and just check whether you have written everything from this page. Done? Okay. Just check whether you have written this and this. Okay, done. Next, let us discuss relation of partners. Now, this is one very important unit for exam because most of the questions are asked from this part. Now, what are the rights of a partner? We will be studying duties separately. Over here, we are going to study rights, duties, and most of the provisions of partnership are covered here. Rights will include he has a right to take, please highlight the keywords, active part in the conduct of the business. Every partner has the right to take active part in the conduct of the business of the firm. He has the right to be consulted. What if the matter is very fundamental, it is very important? We require consent of all partners. Okay, we require consent of, let me write it over here, we require consent of all the partners because it's an important matter. But what about routine, like administrative matters? Then we require consent of just majority. We require consent of just the majority. Then we have right to remuneration. So the key word here is remuneration. Is every partner entitled to receive salary, commission, remuneration? No, he will receive only if it is mentioned in the deed. Yes, very good. He will receive only if mentioned in the deed, only if allowed by the deed. Every partner has the right to access books, to inspect the books. He has the right to share in profits. Can you tell me in what ratio? In the profit sharing ratio. But if nothing is specified, then equally. Every partner is entitled to interest on capital, right? No. Why? Okay, I totally agree with your reason if you say that he will get only if mentioned in the deed. He is entitled to interest on capital only if it is mentioned in the deed. Interest on advances. Now, partner has given loan to the firm. You will get whatever rate is agreed. Nothing is agreed. Then 6%. So, either the agreed rate or 6% per annum. So, advances. Right to be indemnified. Write on the meaning of indemnify, students. Indemnify means to compensate. So, if the partner has incurred some expense for the firm, now he has incurred, later on he can claim that from the firm. He can claim it from the firm because it's the firm's expense, not his expense. Every partner has the right to stop admission of a new partner because admission requires consent of all. It requires consent of all partners. Now, what if my consent was not obtained? Then I can stop the admission of a partner. He has the right to retire, dissolve. What if the partnership is at will? Then how will the retirement or dissolution take place? Tell me. Very good. Write down by notice. You're so smart. Students, this is such a good way of revising, no? It's not that I am talking and you are just listening. It's you are also revising along with me. This is how revision should take place. So it should not be just a one-way traffic. It should be revision from both the sides, yes? What about particular partnership? How will you dissolve this? How will you retire? We just discussed with the consent of all partners. That's so right. Consent of all the partners. Every partner has right not to be expelled. You cannot just expel a partner because you don't like him. There are certain conditions. So here we will write expulsion under certain circumstances. Okay, so yes, we can expel him, but only under certain circumstances. What are those circumstances? We will be discussing shortly. Right of outgoing partners, section 36. Now, over here, students, I will be discussing two things, okay? Two rights of an outgoing partner. Under section 36, he has the right to carry on competing business, okay? So, section 36 talks about right to carry on competing business. And I will also be discussing section 37. So you will write down section 37. Right to share profits under certain circumstances. Okay, he has a right to share profits under certain circumstances. So, right of an outgoing partner to carry on competing business. Now, partner has left the firm, but we still allow him to carry on business which is competing with that of the firm if he makes three promises. The first promise is that he should promise he will not use the firm's name. Okay, he will not use the firm's name. Okay, he will not represent himself as partner of the firm. He will not say that no, I'm still carrying on the partnership business. And he promises not to solicit our customers. So if he makes three promises, first is he will not use the firm's name, he will not represent himself to be as a partner, he will not solicit our customer. Then even though he is leaving the firm, let's say Z has left, we will still allow him to start competing business if he makes these three promises. Now, because he is leaving the firm, his account needs to be settled. But what if settlement is not done? Then in that case, if settlement is not done, law says either you share profits with him, you share profits, which is attributable to the use of money, means how much money you're using, on that basis you give him his share of profit, or you give him interest at the rate of 6% per annum. Either give him his share of profit or 6% interest. Outgoing here means someone who has retired or he has died. Okay, so he has right to share profits. Outgoing partner has a right to share profits under certain circumstances that is discussed under section 37. Duties not very important for exam, so just go through the list which I have given you. Duty of good faith, duty to carry on the business to the greatest common advantage, duty to render true accounts, to give full information, to indemnify for loss, duty to attend diligently, duty to perform your duties properly, duty to share losses, duty to account for personal profits, duty to account for profits of competing business, and duty to use the firm's property exclusively for the firm. Not very important for exam. Next we have relation of partners with third party. Okay, section 18. Now, the relation is governed by mutual agency. What is mutual agency? It means that a partner is principal as well as agent. Okay, but this applies only for transactions with, what should I write? This concept of mutual agency, that partner is principal as well as agent. As a principal, he is bound by the act of other partners, and as an agent, he can bind the other partners. This is valid only for transactions with, what should I write? Third parties, outsiders. This is not applicable for transactions between the partners themselves. Between the partners themselves. So let's say that X, Y, Z have made promises to A. If Z does not fulfill the promise, other partners are liable. But what if X made a promise to Y? If X does not perform, will Z be liable? Act says no. For the promises made among the partners themselves, there is no mutual agency. You cannot recover it from the other partner. Students, next we have notice to acting partner. Now, who is an acting partner? Acting means he is an active partner. So notice to acting partner is like notice to firm. Means if you communicate something to an active partner, it is as if you have communicated that to the firm, to the other partners. Okay, so notice here means communication. So communication notice given to active partner is like it is given notice to the firm, to the other partners, except in case of fraud. Okay, this is very important. Here you can also write other partners. So notice given to active partner is like notice given to the firm, to the other partners. Students, just check whether you have written everything properly or not. So if I communicate something to an active partner, it is as if I have communicated to the other partners except fraud. So if Z has some intention of committing fraud with a third party, notice given to Z will not be considered as if notice is given to X and Y. Only Z, only the partner in this fraudulent act will be responsible to the third party. Other partners are not liable. Students, just check whether everything is complete, everything is properly written in your notes. Done? Okay, you can always pause the video to check whether your workbook is complete or not. All right, and this one. Done? Very good. Next, we have some very important part, implied authority. Now, what is authority? Authority means right of the partner to bind the firm by his own acts. So, do I have the right to bind the firm? Yes. Now, this authority may be either express authority, which is expressly given, or it may be implied authority, means which is understood by law, that if you are a partner, you will be having this authority. So express means it is expressly agreed between the partners by an agreement. But what is implied? Implied means it is arising by law. Law says if you are a partner, you have this authority. So we need not expressly give him that as a partner, he has that authority. So which are the acts within implied authority? Students, this list is very, very important for exam. Even the restrictions, the statutory restrictions, they are very, very important for exam. The entire list is important. So as a partner, let us highlight you have the right to purchase goods which are generally used by the business. If you can buy, you can also sell. If you buy, you will have to make payments, you will have to settle accounts. If you sell, you will receive payments and you will issue receipts. Did you understand how these 4 points are connected? I can purchase, I can sell, I can make payment, I can receive payment. I can also engage servants, I can employ people for the business of the firm. I can engage a lawyer to defend an action. I can also appoint a lawyer to defend some action taken against the firm. I can borrow money for the firm. I can pledge movable property of the firm. I can draw, accept, endorse bill of exchange and other negotiable instruments. I can pledge movable, okay, not immovable. I cannot transfer immovable property belonging to the firm. Neither can I purchase on my own. I need to obtain consent of the other partners. Now, I can movable, yes, very much I can pledge. Now, these are the implied authorities given to a partner, but there may sometimes be restriction. As a partner, you cannot perform these restricted acts. Now, there are certain restrictions which are statutory, means they are imposed by law. And there are certain restrictions which are imposed by mutual agreement. See, if it is statutory, if it is imposed by law, everyone, by everyone I mean third party, is presumed to have knowledge about these restrictions. So see, if it is statutory, it is given in law, then I assume that you are aware of these restrictions. Imposed by mutual agreement, the third party will be liable only when he knows about it. Okay, we will discuss that. Now, these are statutory restrictions. Everyone is presumed to have knowledge because it is statutory. You should know the law of your own country. As a partner, I cannot on my own submit a dispute to arbitration. I cannot go for out of court settlement without consulting the other partners. I cannot open a bank account on behalf of the firm in my own name. I cannot compromise or relinquish a claim or a portion. So I cannot give up a claim. Like I cannot tell the data, it's okay, don't pay the money. I need to ask the other partners. I cannot just give up the claim. I cannot withdraw a case filed by or on behalf of the firm. I need to consult the other partners. I cannot admit a liability. I cannot agree to pay a liability in a suit proceedings filed against the firm. I cannot buy, I cannot sell immovable property except with the consent of the other partners. I cannot enter into partnership on behalf of the firm. XYZ, they are partners. I cannot tell, okay, now these two firms will carry on business together in partnership. No, alone as a partner, I cannot take that decision. Is the firm liable to the third party? No, the firm is not liable. Why? Because you're supposed to know about these restrictions. What if he is not aware of these restrictions? Even then, firm is not liable because you're supposed to know about them. However, what about the restrictions imposed by mutual agreement? We have mutually agreed upon those restrictions. See, in that case, you have to inform the third party. Otherwise, how will he come to know about it? Let's say, for example, that X, Y, Z, they are partners and they have imposed restriction on Z's borrowing. Okay? They have imposed restrictions that he cannot borrow more than 30,000. But how will the third party know about your mutually agreed restrictions? You have to tell him, no? When is the firm liable? When third party is ignorant of the restriction, when they don't know about it. What if third party is not aware? Yes, then the firm is liable. But what if third party is aware? What if third party is aware? Then what will your answer be? The firm is not liable. Because third party knows about the restriction, then the firm is not liable. Students, is this clear? Please check whether you have highlighted everything properly, whether your notes, your workbook is complete. Please check. Done? Okay. What about this? All right. And the last part. Let us proceed with liability of firm and its partner to a third party. Now, when there is a contract between the firm and outsider, let us see to what extent is the firm liable. So the firm will be liable for all acts of the partner. So it's as if it is act of the firm. Okay. So act of partners will bind the firm. It will be considered as act of the firm. So for acts of the firm, there's no distinction, right, between the firm and partners. So for acts of the firm, partners are liable. Yes. So the firm is always liable for all the acts of partners which are within their authority. So let's say that Mr. X ordered certain goods from A. If X fails to pay, then A can recover it from either Y or Z because it is considered to be act of the firm. So yes, the firm is liable for acts done by partners on behalf of the firm. Okay, so partner acts as an agent of the firm. He acts as an agent on behalf of the other partners. What about wrongful acts done by partner? Okay, who is liable for the wrongful act of the partner? See, over here, if we have given some authority to the partner and he does not exercise it correctly, then the firm is liable because we had given the authority to the partner. Yes. So, who will be responsible for wrongful act of the partner done within his authority? So, who is liable? Okay. So, the firm is liable. Firm is liable. See, we had authorized the partner, but he performed some wrongful act in the act which was authorized. Like, say, for example, let's say that there was a firm. Okay. It was a firm of grain merchants. The firm authorized Z to obtain some information about a tender. So it was within their lawful means to obtain some information regarding the tender. Now, what did Z do? Instead of going for the lawful means, he bribed the clerk and he obtained exact information. If the competitor was, let's say, bidding at 400 rupees, he wrote rupees 395. So obviously the firm got the contract because he knew the exact price, so he placed a bid lesser than that price, because of which the competitor lost business. Now over here, the loss is because of Z's wrongful act. So the competitor filed case against the firm. Okay. Now over here, the firm will be liable because some wrongful act was done in by Z within his authorized, or within his authority. Like, we only had authorized him to go and obtain information. He committed some wrongful act in that particular authorized act. Okay. So yes, if we have given him authority and he commits some wrongful act, then the firm is liable. What if the wrongful act is beyond the authority of the partner, but the other partners have ratified it, but the other partners have later on confirmed it? Okay. Even though the act was beyond his authority, like let's say we had asked the partner to go and buy rice, but along with rice, he bought wheat also. Then later on, the firm ratified this act. Okay, there is ratification. What is the meaning of ratification? They go and confirm, okay, it's okay. He was not authorized to buy wheat, but it's of good quality. We are okay with it. We will buy it. We will pay for it. If the firm is ratifying, they are confirming it later, then the firm is liable. But what if some wrongful act was done by the partner which is beyond his authority? Okay, the wrongful act is beyond his authority. Then who will be liable? Then in this case, the partner himself will be liable. Okay, the partner will be liable. Now over here, when you say the firm is liable, it means that the firm will pay money to the third party, and then the firm will recover it from the partner who has committed this wrongful act. Okay, they will recover it. But in the second case, when it is beyond his authority, he was not authorized, then the partner will be liable to the third party. Okay, he will be liable to the third party. Students, please write this in your textbook, in your workbook. Done? All right. Liability for misapplication of money or property by the partner. Okay, misapplication of money or property by a partner. Now this is the example. First is discussed separately, so we will cover that. Where money or property is received by the partner and misapplied by the same partner. So the money or property is received by a partner and it is misapplied by the same partner. Like, say for example, I'll discuss about money. Okay, XYZ is a firm. Debtor paid 50,000 rupees to Z. Now Z misappropriated that money. He went and spent it. Okay, so the debtor paid 50,000 rupees to Z. Okay, now Z was alone in the office. He was authorized to receive payment. So the debtor made the payment to Z. For the firm, Z misapplied it, misappropriated it. Now over here, the same partner, the one who was receiving it, has misapplied it. Then who is liable? Of course, the firm is liable. We cannot tell the debtor to make the payment again. Firm is liable. Over here, we cannot ask the debtor, oh, do you know something? Z misapplied that money. Why don't you pay it again? He has paid that once. His liability is over. Where the money or property is received by the firm and it is misapplied by any other partner. Okay. The misapplication, it is misapplied by any other partner. Let's say XYZ. It's a firm. Okay. Now some third party gave securities for safekeeping. Okay. They gave some securities, some shares for safekeeping. Now in this case, they gave this to Z. Now Z was keeping it in the locker. X saw him. Then later on, X quietly went and removed those shares and securities and sold them. Misapplied, misappropriated the money. Can the firm tell the third party, do you know something that X misapplied those shares, he sold, he misappropriated the money. You forget that there was some security or shares which you had kept with us. How can you ask the third party to forget about it? You will be liable to the third party. So in both these cases, the firm is liable. Please write this. Okay, done. These are few other provisions which were which are covered in this unit. Let us discuss something related to admission of a partner. Now, if you're admitting a partner, let's say X and Y, they are partners. They have admitted Z as a partner. Now, this admission should be with the consent of, yes, tell me, what will you write? Perfect. It should be with the consent of all the partners. Yes, it should be with the consent of all the partners. Now, why all? Why not majority? See, when you admit Z, X and Y, they will sacrifice their share of profit. Only then Z will get something. So because you're asking him to sacrifice, you need the consent of all, right? Next we have liability. Will that new partner be liable for acts before admission? No, he won't be liable unless he agrees. Okay, unless he agrees to be liable. Will he be liable for acts after his admission? Definitely yes. Next we have insolvency of a partner. Now the partner will apply to the court and the court will adjudge him, he will declare him to be insolvent. So in case of insolvency, he is adjudged as insolvent by the court. Now what are the effects of him being declared as an insolvent? See, he ceases, means he stops being a partner. Okay, he ceases to remain a partner. So he is no longer a partner. Now, what if he is not a partner? There is some change in the constitution, right? So yes, this will result into dissolution of the firm. Okay, so by default, it results into dissolution. But partners may agree that in case of insolvency, firm will not be dissolved. So unless they don't make such agreement, by default, firm will be dissolved. So it results into dissolution unless otherwise agreed. Okay, unless they agree that the firm will not be dissolved. What about the liability? See, partner's liability ceases. It means he is not liable for acts after the date of adjudication. So after he is declared insolvent, he ceases to be liable for any acts of the firm. His estate will not be liable. Even the firm, okay, even the firm is not liable for acts after the date of him being adjudged as insolvent. So once he is declared as an insolvent, his estate is not liable for acts of the firm done after that order, and the firm is also not liable for acts done after the date of insolvency. Is a public notice required? Do we need to inform everyone that he has become insolvent? You will say no. Why should we tell everyone that he has become insolvent? Next, and one very important concept for practical questions, expulsion of a partner. Now, this is a very common example which is there in the module also. X, Y, Z, they are three partners. The wives of X and Y, they fought in the ladies' club, and the wife of X was injured. So X and Z, they decide to expel, okay, X and Z, they decide to expel Y. Now, this is not a reason for expulsion just because your wives fought in the ladies' club. So the wives of X and Y, they fought in the ladies' club. The wife of X was injured. Now X along with Z decided to expel Y. Now this is not a valid reason for expulsion. For valid expulsion, what are the conditions to be satisfied? The first condition is that the power must be given in the contract, that is the partnership deed. So the partnership deed should authorize you to expel a partner. Then secondly, it must be in good faith. The expulsion must be in good faith. Now, what is the meaning of good faith? Good faith means that it must be firstly in the interest of the firm. So here, is it in the interest of the firm? Is it even a reason to expel a partner? No. Then the one who is being expelled, the expelled partner, must be served with a notice. We should give him a notice that we are expelling you. And the third is that he must be given an opportunity of being heard. See, we cannot just expel him. We will have to also allow him to speak. Like, why should we not expel you? So he should be given an opportunity of being heard. The third requirement is that it must be exercised by majority of partners. The right to expel must be exercised by majority, not all, majority. So what are the conditions? That the power to expel must be given in the deed. It must be in good faith and exercised by majority of the partners. Now, what is good faith? This must be in the interest of the firm. The expelled Partner must be given a notice and he must be given an opportunity of being heard. Is public notice required for expulsion? Yes, very much. We want to inform the public that he has been expelled. Death of a partner. Okay, just pause the video and see if you have written everything correctly. Okay, just pause the video and check. All right. Death of a partner. Will death result into dissolution? Yes, it dissolves unless the partners agree that the firm will not be dissolved. Then in that case, will it result into dissolution? No. Then the firm is not dissolved. Will the estate of a deceased partner be liable for the acts done after death? No. Why should it be liable? Why should the estate be liable? What is the effect of change in the constitution of the firm on continuing guarantee? Now, what is continuing guarantee? There is a separate video which I had made for that. Now, continuing guarantee means guarantee which applies to a series of transactions. Like, say, for example, A had given guarantee for B's good conduct as a cashier. Okay, he had given guarantee for B's good conduct as a cashier. Now this guarantee was given to XYZ firm. Okay, XYZ. Suddenly there was a change in the constitution of the firm. Z died, and let's say that his sons were admitted, even the name of the partnership was changed. Now over here there is a change in the constitution. A's guarantee automatically comes to an end. Okay, so A had given guarantee for B's good conduct as a cashier. There is a change in the constitution. Partner dies, new partners are admitted, the name of the firm is changed. The guarantee automatically comes to an end. So what is the effect of change in the constitution? The continuing guarantee, you can write, comes to an end. Okay, it comes to an end. Done with the writing? Okay. Next is registration of firm. Now that was about relation of partners. Let us discuss registration of firm. Registration is the process of getting the firm registered with registrar of firms. So you submit the necessary documents, you pay the fees, get it registered. So what is the meaning of registration? It means getting the partnership firm registered with the registrar in which the place of business is either situated or proposed to be situated in case of a new firm. So you go to the registrar, submit the documents, pay the fees, get the firm registered. Is it compulsory? Yes, students, tell me, think and tell me, is it compulsory? No, absolutely not. Registration is not compulsory. Is there any penalty for non-registration? Why should there be a penalty? If it's not compulsory, there should be no penalty, right? When can it be registered? Anytime, because it's not compulsory. Then, is it that you should not get the firm registered? No, 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 no. Wait. There are certain, you can write down, disabilities. Even though registration is not compulsory, there are certain disabilities which make the registration of a firm desirable. So what are the consequences of non-registration? What if I don't register the firm? Then what will happen? Then in that case, the firm cannot file a case against the outsiders. No suit by partners against the firm, against the outsiders, no suit against third parties. So firm cannot sue the third party can sue the firm. We cannot even file case against the other partner or the firm. No right to claim set off in excess of rupees 100. Now let's say that the firm had to pay 10,000 rupees to X and they had to recover 2,000 rupees from X. Now what will be the best course of action? That the firm should pay only 8,000. Now what are you doing? You are setting it off. Okay, this is nothing but set off. But the amount is more than 100, right? You will not be allowed to claim set off. You will have to pay. So this is not allowed because the firm is unregistered. You will have to pay the entire amount of 10,000. Are you getting me? Because this set off is more than 100. What if the receivable was only 20 rupees? Then you will get a set off. But if it is more than 100, then no set off. So non-registration will not affect right of third party to sue the firm or partner. Yes, we can't sue the third party, but they can sue the firm. The right of partners to sue for dissolution. Yes, you can file a case for dissolution, that is allowed. You can file a case and you can also get the accounts settled of a dissolved firm. You can realize the property, you can sell the property. If you don't get a share, you can even file a case because this is all at the time of dissolution. Dissolution is not affected by non-registration of the firm. Official assignee, receiver of the court, they can release the property of the insolvent partner and bring an action. So it will not affect the rights of the official receiver or assignee to sell the property of an insolvent partner. The right to sue or claim set off if the value of suit is not more than 100. So you can maximum claim 100 rupees of benefit. So if the set off is 100 or less, you will get it. If it is more than 100, no set off, pay the entire amount. So what will not be affected by non-registration? It will not affect third parties' right to file case against the firm. You can dissolve the firm, you can sell the property, you can even file cases because at the time of dissolution, your non-registration will not affect the dissolution, realization, selling of property. Official assignee, receiver, they are appointed at the time of insolvency of any partner. They can sell the property of the partner, they can settle claims. If the firm is not ready, they can even file a case and you can claim set off less than 100. Next, we have dissolution of firm. To dissolve means to come to an end, okay? Discontinuation. It may be either dissolution of the firm or dissolution of partnership. First, let us discuss dissolution of partnership. Now, dissolution of partnership is nothing but change in the existing relation of partners. So, admission, retirement, death, okay, some relation has changed. The firm does not get affected. Okay, so there's no change in the firm. Business will continue. So, old partnership ends, new partnership you can write down comes into existence. Okay, new partnership comes into existence. Does the business continue? Yes, there's just some change in the existing relation of partners. Business continues. But dissolution of firm means everything comes to an end. Okay, it is a dissolution of partnership between all the partners. So if they decide that no, we just don't want to discontinue, we want to end the firm, okay, then yes, the business does not continue. Old partnership ends, new partnership does not come into existence. Assets are sold, liabilities are paid off, surplus is distributed, everything comes to an end. So if the partners, they decide, no, we don't want to continue now, it's dissolution of the firm. Now, there are different modes, there are different ways of dissolution. Maybe without the order of the court, or any partner can go to the court and apply for dissolution. Now, dissolution without the order may be by mutual agreement. So, they decide by mutual agreement, we don't want to continue with the business. Sometimes it is compulsorily dissolved, like your business becomes unlawful. It has to be compulsorily dissolved. See, we are talking dissolution of the firm, not just partnership. So over here, the business only comes to an end. So compulsory dissolution will be, let's say, for example, the business has become unlawful. The business itself becomes unlawful on happening of certain contingencies. So over here we will have death, insolvency, then your partnership was for a particular period of time, that time period is over, partnership comes to an end. So time is over, venture is over, it comes to an end. We give notice. Now notice will be given, yes, can you tell me in case of particular partnership or partnership at will? Yes, you're right. Notice will be in case of partnership at will. You can give a notice, dissolve the firm. Okay, in case of order of the court, any partner can apply to the court and get the firm dissolved. Now, this will happen in case of insanity of partner. Some active partner has become insane. We can't do business without him. Firm is dissolved. Incapacity, permanent incapacity, that active partner has become permanently incapable of doing business, dissolve the firm. Misconduct of a partner, persistent breach of contract, breach of trust, perpetual loss. Students, a practical question is generally asked on this part. The firm is carrying on business since 3 years and every year there is loss. This loss will continue. Better to dissolve the firm. Transfer of whole or 100% interest in the partnership. I transfer my 100% interest in favor of someone else. Others may not agree, the firm is dissolved. And any other just and equitable ground. So these are different modes of dissolution of the firm. Next we have, okay, just see whether you have written everything. Return of premium on premature dissolution. Students, I had covered this in a separate video, so you can go and watch that video. Return of premium. Premium here means goodwill. Okay, so return of premium means return of goodwill. Now let's say that X, Y, Z, they are 3 partners. At the time of admission, Z had brought in 1 lakh rupees towards his contribution, as his contribution towards goodwill. Now the other partners had told him that the business will be carried on for 10 years, but the business got dissolved after 8 years. Okay, so he got the benefit of this 1 lakh only for 8 years. He is entitled to return of premium that he paid for 2 years. See, he had paid thinking that he will get the benefit for 10 years, but the business dissolved after 8 years. So he is entitled to return of premium for these 2 years. He has paid for those 2 years, not got the benefit. Law says, yes, you are entitled to some reasonable amount of return. Okay, so how much will be returned? It will be reasonable amount. Well, there are certain circumstances wherein you will not get return. There are certain circumstances wherein you will get proportionate return. Okay, so law says the first option is some reasonable amount. There are certain cases wherein you will get proportionate return. and there are certain circumstances wherein you will get no return. So students, I have discussed this in detail in that video. Please do go and watch that video. Then we have liabilities for the acts done after dissolution. See, now the firm is dissolved, you need to give a public notice of dissolution. If it is not given, then the firm will be liable to the third parties for the acts done even after dissolution. So, liabilities for acts done after dissolution in case of, you can write down, failure to give public notice. Now you must be wondering, ma'am, you have used this public notice so many times. Could you please explain what exactly is public notice? See, public notice means giving notice to the public. How? If your firm is unregistered, see, registration is not compulsory. I'm talking about India as a whole, okay? As per the act, it is not compulsory. Your state government may mandate it. In case of an unregistered firm, notice, okay, public notice will be given in the official gazette. This is how you give public notice. Official gazette, it's a public document which is issued by the government on weekly basis, okay? It's like for announcements. So you have to publish it in the official gazette and you will give it in the newspaper, because we feel that everyone reads the newspaper. They may not read the official gazette, but everybody reads the newspaper. And in at least one vernacular newspaper. Vernacular means in your local language. So if it's an unregistered firm, give it in the official gazette. It's a government document, and also in newspaper. But if your firm is registered, then you give it in the official gazette first. This is like giving public notice to all, but not everybody reads the gazette. So you give it in the newspaper and in at least one vernacular newspaper. So can I say in one English, one vernacular? Because your firm is registered, you will also have to give a notice to registrar of firms. Okay, you will have to give a notice to registrar of firms. So this is how public notice is given. They will give a heading public notice and the notice will be given. Now, when do we need to give public notice? Okay, before that, just pause the video, write this down. Done? Okay. Now this newspaper, you must be wondering which newspaper, like can we give it in all over India? No, it is given in the newspaper circulating in the district where the main office of the partnership is situated, okay, registered office like. This public notice is required in case of retirement. Do you know the other reasons? Retirement, dissolution, expulsion of partner, and minor partner's decision whether he wants to continue as a partner or not. So minor partner's decision whether he wants to continue as a full-fledged partner or not. But it is not required in case of death and insolvency. Okay, it is not required in case of death or insolvency. Please write this down, students. Okay. Now that the firm is dissolved, we need to settle the accounts. Yes, now assets will be sold, liabilities will be paid off. How will this be settled? See, now, first thing you will do is sell the assets. Okay, so from where will you get money? From where will you pay your losses? Firstly, they will be paid out of the assets of the firm or the profit. You sell the assets, you get profit. That is over. Then out of the capital. So you sell the assets, whatever is the profit, some may be lying with the firm also, some profit. Use that. That is over. Then use the partner's capital. That is also over. Then lastly, out of partner's share. Okay, they're from their personal property. So we will ask them to bring money from their personal property. They are jointly, severally, unlimited liability. Yes. Now that you have got money, how will you apply it? Firstly, whom will you pay? We will pay the outsiders. Can I say third party? Then we will pay partners loan. We will pay off partner's loan because for loan he is considered just like an outsider. Then you will pay capital. Lastly, if there is any residue, that will be divided among partners. Okay, so if there is any residue, that will be divided in profit sharing ratio. Is it clear? Please pause the video, write this down. Done. Okay. Oh my god, students, we have completed Partnership Act. Don't tell me. Every unit is completed with handwritten notes. That's superb. Wow. And that too in record time. I'm so impressed. Students, with this we come to an end of the Indian Partnership Act 1932. We also took down notes for last minute revision. Now, what should we start next? Well, next I am going to start with the Sale of Goods Act 1930. So I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, do share, like, and subscribe to your channel Theory Masters Learning so that you continue to get notifications regarding such interesting and amazing, refreshing videos which we post from time to time.